US President Barack Obama arrived in Hanoi last night, May 22nd, for a 3-day official visit to Vietnam to strengthen ties in trade and defense. This historic visit by President Obama marks his 10th trip to Asia, which underscores his aim of rebalancing ties with the region as outlined in his foreign and economic policies. President Obama is the third US president to visit Vietnam since the end of the Vietnam War 40 years ago. Deepening engagement with Vietnam is high on President Obama's agenda to develop a strategic partnership with Hanoi. We have with us the Straits Times Indochina Bureau Chief Nirmal Ghosh to share his views on US-Vietnam relations. Nirmal, the Obama administration wants to develop stronger defense cooperation with Vietnam, but the partial arms embargo that remains in place following the end of the Vietnam War could be a stumbling block. Now, what are your views on this?
Yes, it is a stumbling block, but I think the signs are clear. The US wants it lifted. The Vietnamese want it lifted. It requires congressional approval on a case-by-case basis to lift this embargo. Now, President Obama is essentially going to make it very clear in Hanoi what is required as a quid pro quo to satisfy public opinion and Congress in the states. This is probably going to be issues on human rights because under the terms of the embargo, each case will be evaluated against Vietnam's human rights record. Now, that is understood by all parties, but I don't think that human rights is going to be allowed to get in the way of lifting it. It is not going to be lifted overnight. That is unlikely, analysts say, who are tracking this very closely. Of course, all eyes are on it because it's such a critical issue. But it is definitely just a matter of time.
The naval base in Cam Ranh Bay would be strategic for US operations in the South China Sea in its conduct of patrols to ensure freedom of navigation and maritime trade in light of the territorial disputes and China's assertiveness in building structures on reefs, including airstrips and port facilities. The use of Cam Ranh Bay will complement the 5 military bases in the Philippines that the US has access to under the Enhanced Defense Cooperation Agreement, where the nearest base to the South China Sea is on the island of Palawan. Now, what are the chances of Vietnam offering the US access to the naval base to enhance regional security, where the navies of both countries could conduct joint patrols?
What Vietnam is trying to do is get navies of several countries, including its new sort of alliance, if you will, say the Japanese, the Philippines, Australians, and of course the US, to all use Cam Ranh Bay. It wants civilian and naval traffic in Cam Ranh Bay to increase the stakeholdership in the whole area. Now again, whether that translates down the road into some kind of special arrangement for the US specifically, we don't know, and that is probably a little unlikely in the very immediate future.
President Obama will head off to Japan on May 25th to attend the G7 summit, where he will be the first serving US president to visit Hiroshima after the first atomic bomb was dropped over the city in 1945 by President Truman. How significant is this gesture? And how can President Obama use the occasion to address nuclear non-proliferation and the devastation of war?
I think this is a hugely significant gesture for both sides. The Japanese want the world to understand what happened, the enormity of the event. There is also talk in Japan of a reciprocity in this case, that Prime Minister Shinzo Abe may actually in a future visit to the United States visit Pearl Harbor in Hawaii, which was bombed by the Japanese, which started the war between Japan and America. There is going to be no apology from either side. There's going to be no apology from President Obama. He has made it clear that in wartime decisions are taken, which are forced upon leaders. But certainly, the Hiroshima Memorial is a powerful statement against the horror of nuclear war, and President Obama will certainly use that to press for non-proliferation. And in this case, of course, the closest neighbor is North Korea, and that weighs quite heavily on the minds of everyone in that particular region.
Thank you so much for your insight, Nirmal, and thank you for watching. For more local and foreign news and videos, follow us on Facebook or log on to straitstimes.com.